Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp Breaking Boundaries. Jerry and I are very happy to have you. We have our podcast divided up into different themes, and we offer choice boards. So please leverage those where you can listen to all of our podcasts within those themes and then also get CEU credit. One of the themes is student engagement. And we know more than ever, it is so important to find different ways to leverage learning theory and monitor how learning theory changes a little bit over time, and leverage that as we teach students. And we're talking a lot about that today, aren't we, Jerry?
We are. We have our guest, Jason Osborne, with us today. And my goodness, I just have to read a little bit of his bio because it's very impressive. He works in science, engineering, and communication and education. He's been recognized by the following publications: Nature, Scientific American, Popular Science, National Geographic, the Discovery Channel. He's had a TEDx talk. He's been on MSNBC, CNN, and NPR. And in 2013, President Obama and the White House recognized him as a champion for change for his national impact on science literacy and science education.
Wow, how did LinkedUp get on this list here? Wow.
I know. Is that just pretty amazing? So, Jason, we are so excited to have you on our podcast today. And we welcome you to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. And it sounds like you have broken a few boundaries along the way.
Well, I'm happy to be here today, and I'm excited about the conversation.
Yes. And, as I was reading through some of your biography, I noticed that you were actually working in the medical field, and then you went into public education. How did all that happen?
Oh, it's a great question, and there's lots of nuts and bolts to the answer. So I'll try to summarize it as quickly as possible. So I was working for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, Janelia Research Campus, and basically we were a team of many people that were ultimately trying to benefit mankind by scientific discoveries. So anything that we would develop, we would give away to the public, and it's based on a trust by the Howard Hughes, which is, I think, currently over $20 billion. So we would burn the interest to benefit mankind. But on the side of that, now I was more in systems and mechanical engineering. And on the side, I had a nonprofit organization that was devoted to education and exploration. So that was becoming hugely successful. As you mentioned, the White House caught a glimpse of the work, and it was based around anyone, and more specifically, students and teachers getting involved in research questions through the lens of citizen science.
Oh, now stop right there. We're going to have you stop right there. What is citizen science?
Great question.
Before you go further, and then we'll want you to pick up and go further, but
Absolutely.
I've not heard that term, so.
Yeah, so citizen science is an opportunity for anyone to contribute to a scientific question. And what I mean by that is, say, if you're a naturalist and say you like to go hiking, you can report on, say, butterfly migrations to professors that are studying that, and that's a contribution to science. So you don't necessarily have to be a professional in the field to do that, right? You just have an interest, and then you're able to contribute. So I thought, well, why not take that model and embed it into the education system, so that could be an everyday occurrence in a classroom where students and teachers can contribute. It makes the learning more tangible and more exciting, and it also really aligns to post-secondary, so they can see potential pathways as they go through their learning journey.
Love that. And it makes it so relevant because they feel like they have a real audience and they're really making a contribution. And is so as you're working with K-12 education, it seems once people start working there, you kind of get bit by the bug, don't you? It's pretty exciting to work with students and teachers and be a part of that. But what are some of the like the challenges in working with educators in doing this kind of work? Or is it pretty seamless and goes right together and you don't have to worry about it?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I made that migration into K-12 because I thought I could make an impact. Working in the medical field, and I also have a background in aerospace and defense, and it goes on and on and on, and paleontology. So I thought, well, if I came into the system and I brought all these networks and all these connections, I can start to make an impact on how we can change traditional instruction. How do we bring post-secondary into that equation? How do we align citizen science as maybe that catalyst where students and teachers can help answer very difficult scientific problems in the everyday classroom and make it exciting? But yeah, so it was exciting to go and transition into that arena. And I was a chief innovation officer for 6.5 years in a West Texas school district. But one of the biggest challenges is a lot of folks, coming through the system, they're not exposed to outside of the system, so they only know what's in that box. And so it makes it very challenging and difficult to bring in something that looks very foreign. It's very different. It's not the same or the status quo. And so that was a major challenge to try to win people over to say, hey, this could really improve your test scores without really teaching to the test, because they're going to get excited about learning. They're going to get excited about what they're doing. And learning is natural. So ultimately they would do better on test scores. It's just creating the excitement in the classroom. So I'd say one of the biggest struggles is that foreign component. Very traditional teaching methods can be very difficult to change. Personalities are always interesting to deal with, especially when there's a comfort level in some cases, and they're very comfortable about what they're doing, and this is the way we always did it. So coming in as a chief innovation officer, you're kind of the agitator, right? And it's meant to be the agitator. You're agitating the system. And, the system, the K-12 system, also needs to evolve more swiftly, especially with technology and AI and machine learning and virtual reality and augmented reality. What's being used in the public sector, K-12 is getting way behind. And it's getting quicker and quicker and quicker. So it has to change the way it does its methodologies in instruction.
So how do we bring them up to speed?
Again, using that lens of partnering with post-secondary. So during the 6.5 years tenure that I was at in West Texas in a school district, we accumulated 27 university and institute partnerships. I don't know any other district that has done that. That means that we actively had partnerships where students and teachers could contribute to the work, and we truly had partnerships where students were learning about tissue engineering from Tulane Medical Campus, or they were learning about how to track neurons in a brain at the University of South Florida. Where they're contributing to paleontology, and their specimens are going to SMU, so Southern Methodist University, or working with the University of Vermont or Mount Holyoke College up in the Northeast, and helping to create a curriculum in neuroscience. And you never hear of neuroscience in high school, but we developed the very first neuroscience high school accredited course in the country in West Texas. So creating these opportunities where you really build these true partnerships to help the district move along, to make sure it does evolve with the latest and greatest in science and research. And so that was extremely successful. Like I said, we rolled out a new neuroscience course. We had all these partnerships. We had students in shooting experiments up to the International Space Station where astronauts are fulfilling their experiments, and then they come back down, and that's in partnership with multiple universities and around the country. So that was hugely successful. So how do you take that model and then how do you create it in a more systemic way? And that leads into where I'm at now with a virtual reality software and curriculum company, where we're taking a lot of that model and we're embedding it into a technology solution to make it easier for embedding within the classroom, as well as continuing those partnerships, but at a national and global scale.
Yeah, I wanted to hear more about that. So, despite, all the challenges, despite all of the um, different roadblocks, perhaps, to bring innovation to education, because you described really it happens all the time that we're behind in K-12. Things are way far ahead. I'm hoping that, we're seeing a little bit less of a gap. Uh, what have you done to build that momentum, and also explain a little bit more about this VR initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, by creating these partnerships, it's really hard for school districts to manage that. And so in an innovation office, and then of course, learning them, developing these methodologies, um, I had multiple superintendents ask me, is like, how do you partner with them? What does that look like? Who do I get involved? And so what we've done at syGlass is we now manage that partnership. So we have over 200 researchers around the world that we work with on the scientific aspect of the virtual reality software syGlass, which is mainly directed towards scientific questions. So we already have that bed of researchers, and then we have researchers that want to work with school districts that help um, the procurement of the curriculum itself. So we have the best in the field in virtual reality with their avatars, teaching students and teachers at the same time, because it's job embedded professional learning, because they're learning from the best. So they learn along from the best and with the latest and greatest in the work that they're doing within that university or institute. So it's a very different methodology to instruction. So we're really closing that gap. So we manage that as a software and curriculum company, as well as provide the real data, authentic research within the classroom. So that means if you're teaching anatomy, you're learning from real MRI scans of humans. You're learning from real CT scans. You're learning from what's actively being used within the research and health science fields. So they're not adopting something. That's another issue that I feel like the education system, they adopt the system for a long period of time. So if you're adopting a curriculum, you adopt it for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Well, things change, especially with technology and AI, like I mentioned earlier. So now we can make sure that the classroom constantly evolves. And that's where really, I think, the novelty in when it comes to innovation and the way our approach with syGlass is we're making sure that that is consistent, that we are constantly giving students, teachers, school districts, the opportunity to evolve with the scientific research questions. And that sets kids up for success, right? Because now they're going to be ahead of their peers. And now they're going to have that natural transition into post-secondary because they're leaving high school with a postdoc experience in some cases.
No, I think that that's so important. When we talk about the gap, you're really working to close that gap because you are intertwining the learning of K-12 and higher ed and what's happening in the real world. So you're bringing those experiences right there. And not just for, I think we've all done that, but for one-offs, right? These like special event type of things. But this seems to be the everyday learning that that is there, and you're kind of socializing the learning, making it intrinsic, making students part of that, so that the learning isn't happening to them, but they are right along with it and in control of it as well.
Jason, it reminds me in the early 2000s, we brought laptops in, and we used that same model where we trained teachers and students simultaneously. I thought it was genius because one person doesn't remember everything, right? And so you have this whole group of people learning it and supporting each other, and it's not all on the teacher's shoulders. So I would suspect that you get that same kind of benefit from the work that you're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because when we were rolling out, or when we do roll out neuroscience, it's very intimidating, right? It's very intimidating for a teacher. I'm not a neuroscientist, but what we're finding is because we provide so many resources and a turnkey solution that when teachers do embed it, they get so excited. Actually, we have a teacher in West Texas it was the teacher of the year, and now I think she's up for regional teacher of the year, and she's the one rolling out this coursework, and she was asked to present at a state level what you're doing in the classroom. But she's not a neuroscientist, but she's excited because she's learning along with the students, which builds a better relationship with students. So, students can, if they're learning in a classroom and they find that the teacher is struggling because they don't know all the content, they can look it up really quickly and they can find that, hey, this is incorrect. They question the teacher, and then that puts the teacher in a difficult situation where now they lost trust in their classroom. So what we're trying to do is take that away. So we have teachers that have that job embedded professional learning. They are learning with the best, so they get more added to their resume because of what they've been exposed to or contribute to because of the citizen science component. So equally, you're investing in that return for your investment, which is the teacher, because the teacher is going to see kids every year, right? They're going to instruct more and more kids. The district ultimately has to make sure that teacher is taken care of as equally as students' learning process. And so, when I was chief innovation officer, that was something that we really tried to emphasize. And now with syGlass, that's embedded into that model where that teacher is learning along with students, so they can take it as far as they wish to take it. They can embed some of their own, methodologies in learning as well. So it's very creative. It's I think a very novel solution to the tomorrow's classroom, right? Tomorrow's education, but bringing it in today.
Yeah, it puts the emphasis on teaching students how to learn instead of learning things. We're learning about the process of learning, and because teachers are modeling it for them as well. So I think that's so important. I love that.
Well, I was going to say too, Jason, there's some pretty impactful research that shows that the closer the teacher is to the learning, the better the teacher they are, because they're learning it at the same time and they're understanding the nuances for the first time, and it actually makes them a better teacher. So I could see that being a bonus for you as well.
We see it all the time. It's fantastic, and it's super exciting to see that, and it's exciting for the teacher because they're rejuvenated. They're excited because this is bringing in a whole new spectrum into their teaching practices. They have more tools in their toolkit, but yet it's not too cumbersome. That is this just yet another thing that I got to do. And so we're seeing it's very well received, and teachers are excited. Administration's excited, and we're growing the business, and we're nationally and looking at globally.
Well, and you're also providing support for those teachers. If they don't know something, you can support them.
Yes, absolutely. And through the VR lens, it makes support so much easier as well, because we have something called multiplayer. So we can have a researcher or our team go into virtual through multiplayer in real time. So it's like coming right into that virtual world, and they can ask questions. We have synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So imagine, like, we have our anatomy instructor, which is at the Ohio State University. He can hop right into the classroom with the kids in a virtual platform, and they can ask him any specific question they might need to ask him, right? Where do you have that in traditional teaching methodology? Right. And that makes it easier for the teacher because the teacher might not know something, and that's okay. But then they have the opportunity to learn along. What I was mentioning earlier, or about to mention earlier, is we just finished a retention study in VR versus traditional teaching models. So we gave the same instruction via 2D or traditional, and the same instruction in a virtual platform. But because kids could see things in 3D and were able to manipulate things, they were able to retain the information 40 times or 40% better than traditional teaching models. Very exciting for us. This is in partnership with the university, as well as a one school district, and now 5 school districts have signed up for this study to continue this work. And then we can see those retention surveys or outputs and data that I think are super exciting. As humans, we are meant to see things in 3D. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I really think that there's this between having the immersive opportunities for students to learn, but also learning alongside their teachers. It really emphasizes the importance of learning how to learn, and not so much the what and the things, but the learning how to learn component is really a big deal. And I really also appreciate the connection with higher ed and K-12. So we have this, K-12, you have these immersive opportunities for students to learn what's happening in the real world as it's happening, and not that we're learning it 5 years later, 4 years later. But also, I think there's this really powerful component that you're talking about with higher ed. How do you see that as kind of like a really important factor there?
Yeah, well, I mean, a true partnership, both entities win, right? And so when we're working with research partners in say the citizen science model, they're getting an extension of their laboratory. Huge win because students are helping to answer scientific questions, right? And at the same time, students are getting tangible learning, and they're learning what really is happening in the real world, right? And they're making a contribution. So that alone is a huge benefit on both ends, right? On the other end, I mean, if you look at post-secondary, a lot of researchers, PIs, they work off of grants. They have to win grants in order to sustain their position. Well, when you're working with school systems, and you can embed that into your grant process, you have a greater chance of success in winning a grant. So that's beneficial. So that's great for the university as well for the PI. And then ultimately, there's some resources that can come back into the school system through that grant process. So there's lots of different wins. There's a lot of universities have to do a level of outreach. What about grow your own? When you're looking at local universities and you're trying to get them to go through the pathway of from K-12 to go into their university, that natural transition by working through a virtual platform like syGlass, it makes it a lot easier to get students to come to your institute. So we're working with universities on that as well, how to figure out those pathways. Same with STEM teachers, getting access through a VR solution like syGlass. We can have teachers teach in VR, and now it's a more natural process on ultimately giving students STEM experiences, like true STEM experiences, where they're working with real data. They're not working, on something that might align with post-secondary, but not necessarily is an actual question that is an answer or needs answered in post-secondary.
Yeah, a lot more opportunity and access there for sure.
Well, and speaking of opportunity and access, I have kind of a social justice question for you here. Do do you at all are you concerned about getting minorities and women into these areas and making sure that they are included in it, because it's been typically a white man's world? And so does syGlass have anything to do with that, or is that out of your lane?
No, not. I mean, that's a wonderful question. We just did a publication at the Society for Neuroscience, and the students that signed up for the neuroscience course in this particular publication, 65 to 70% of them were girls. We're finding that more girls are interested in this platform across districts that we're working with, which is really exciting. And it's also meant to be accessible to all kids, not just GT kids or AP or students that are playing the points game. We have all kids interested. So really, we provide an opportunity for equity and access to all kids. The only thing that really, I mean, sometimes we deal with the digital divide, but we're dealing with that with all forms of technology. So I think not only the state of Texas where we're at is taking charge in digital divide, but also the country is. So I see some really exciting things there as well.
Yes. And I wonder if it's your program that's really supporting teachers and supporting everyone, if that's what's bringing in more women to this, or I wonder if you have a hypothesis of why you have so many.
Hey, that's a really good question. I thought about that many times. I'm not sure. It's when we you see a lot of women going into health sciences, so I see that, but when we're offering like neuroscience, I was just flabbergasted. It was just amazing, and we just constantly get more girls that are interested in that coursework. I think too. I think accessibility has changed so much that I don't know if we really I don't think we're going to face that as an issue going into the future. I don't think it'll be just a man's world, especially in the science and research entities. I think we see this huge wave of equal opportunity for all going into those fields. I like to think that. But you have a great question. I really don't know what the answer is. It's just very exciting. I don't really know. I mean, I guess I just have to. I am a boots on the ground, and I love to interview kids to find out, why they've taken coursework and stuff. But a lot of them it was really interesting and fascinating. Even kids that take the neuroscience course, it's not like we're building a bunch of neuroscientists. They're interested in computer scientists or in computer science. They're interested in statistics, or they're interested in biology, or they're interested in health sciences. They're just coming out with this new toolkit that puts them above their peers when they go to apply to a college.
And I would suspect that part of it is I can take this as a high school student, and I have a bit of a safety net here. I have my high school teachers that can help support me as I try something that's a little more difficult that maybe I wouldn't try on my own. But with that safety net, it seems like it would be something that would be palatable to a lot of people. So I love.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot today about socializing the learning. And I think that is so important is, getting people, the collaboration, the socialization of it. It brings about that excitement. And as Jerry was saying, it takes away, some of that hesitation, that fear, that, is it going to be perfect? Maybe I shouldn't, but instead just going for it. And I think that's just, letting that guard down, and feeling vulnerable in your learning is something that just needs to go away. And I think it can when we are working collaboratively to do that as students, teachers, and so forth.
My next question is an obvious one, and that is syGlass. Is it available only to people in Texas? I'm in Kansas. Could the district that is in my town get involved in that, or How does that work, Jason?
Oh, great. No, syGlass is available to any and all. So we're in multiple districts around the country now and growing. And we have some interest in other countries as well. So what's really amazing is because we have that network of researchers and universities, we can utilize that network for visibility of what we're doing. And then coming from the K-12 environment and that network, I can utilize those connections that I have to get us out. But yes, we we're excited to get into any district. Obviously, it's exciting work. I think it's the right work, which makes it really exciting. We see amazing results. It's just getting the word out there and letting it grow.
That's great. Well, how could people find out more about syGlass? Is there a website? Where would you direct us? And how can they follow you, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. So, syGlass, so SYGLASS.io is the website. And you can go on the website. There's a bar up there. It takes you to the education platform, and then you can write in there if you're interested to contact us. We also have syGlass VR Twitter feed. I have my personal Twitter feed, which is Paleo Explorer, which that's a whole different podcast if we want to talk about that. But and you can reach me there as well.
Hey, that's great. And Jason, we always like to end on this question, kind of a reflective question. In all of the work that you have been doing with syGlass, working with students, educators, what has become clear to you?
I think what really has become clear is, I mean, there is a need for this type of work. There's also a need that we have a broken system, in education, whether we like to admit it or not. We have to make changes in order to ultimately excite kids and excite teachers. We're losing teachers. The system is losing teachers. How do we keep them engaged? Kids, it's ultimately their attention span is shortened, right? Because of the types of social platforms and the digital content that they have access to. But the education system really has to change to adopt to that, because ultimately as humans, we are evolving to that. That is the world we live in, and we have to make change. So really, I think reflecting, I think that is really a focus. And how do we make the system better? How do we work together to make it better? In the education system. I mean, I'm not in the education system anymore, but I'm feeding that education system. How do we work better as a team to ultimately make systemic change?
I totally agree with you on that. And I wonder how we bring about a sense of urgency to educators, that we can't wait 10, 15 more years. We're slow to change. To your point earlier, they have been raised in a certain system and it's hard to change. But how do we create that sense of urgency?
You could start with your legislator. It could start with policy. I think there is a huge awareness. I mean, we're losing superintendents. People are not staying in the field. That we have to change that. We have to address that. And I think as a system, we have to define what really makes a state-of-the-art education, what is important, how do we evolve quickly, and how do we work together? That's a big thing. And I don't have the answers to all that. I just know that I'm very passionate about it. Our company is very passionate about it. And there's very passionate people out in the system. So I think through platforms like this, this podcast, and just getting the word out, and just knowing that there's a lot of people doing really great work, and we just have to think about how do we do it together.
That's exactly right. And I love that the work that you're doing is really redefining education and the way it's done. It's not just taking a process and doing it a little differently. It's really redefining how we can teach and learn. And I think that's powerful. Powerful. So, well, Jason, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I look forward to looking more into syGlass and sharing it out. I hope educators hear about this and become excited about it, districts as well. So I think that you're doing a great service to our students and our teachers with the work that you're doing.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.